Hey guys, my name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I wanted to film a video dedicated to all the books that I DNF'd this year. Because some of these books you know about, like I have this rule for myself that if I read more than 50% of the book, then I will include it towards my reading goal still. So you do know about some of these DNFs, but then some of these I only read like maybe up to 50 pages or less, and I was like, heck no. I just wanted to let you know about all the books that I DNF'd this year. These are gonna be in no particular order, by the way. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is The Whisper Man by Alex North. This is one that I DNF'd, and I still included it towards my reading goal because I was able to read a good chunk of this book, but for some reason this book was just boring me so much and it just wasn't what I was in the mood for. But this book is still getting like a lot of hype lately, so I feel like this one might be one that I'd be willing to give another chance in the future, but like for now it's just a DNF because it just really like bored the hell out of me, and I mainly blame the detective's point of view in this. Another book that I DNF'd that I still counted towards my reading goal for the year is Wilder Girls by Rory Power, and this one I DNF'd after about 200 pages or so, and this one at the end of the day it just wasn't for me. This one was a bit out of my comfort zone because this one's like a sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, body horror kind of book, and it just wasn't really my thing. Like I can appreciate why other people might enjoy this book, but this writing was super hard for me to get into. It was written in a way that was very confusing, and I know it was supposed to be very like whimsical and maybe atmospheric, but it was just really hard for me to get into this book. I just didn't end up caring about any of the characters, and I didn't really care where the story was going, and I was just super uninterested in this, so that's mainly the reason why I ended up DNFing this one. In this book, I ended up getting 60 pages into this one before I DNF'd it, and that is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And this might be one that I might try to get back into in the future, but I just feel like this writing style really didn't work for me because this book was written in 1940, and you can really tell that it was written in 1940 because the writing itself is so like historical and slow, and just the wording of it is very like hard to get into. It's just very old, you can tell, so it was just really putting me in a slump and putting me to sleep when I read this. But this is just one of those classic novels that I just really do want to read, so like I might push myself through this at some point someday, but for now it's a DNF. One of my least favorite books of this whole year that I ended up DNFing is Not the Girl You Marry by Andy J. Christopher, and I'm really bummed about this one because this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I really expected to love this one because it's a millennial makeover on How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, which is one of my favorite movies. Like I just love and adore that movie so much, so I really expected to love this one, and this one was just such a hot mess. Like it was so terrible. These characters didn't have any chemistry, and it was all just like the same shit over and over and over again of them being like, if only I could actually be with them, and this wasn't for like an experiment, and like I actually really like them, too bad I have to break their heart, and like all of that over and over again, so I just couldn't do it anymore. And you'll hear more about this one in my worst of the year, honestly. So yeah. One book that I DNF'd pretty early on in the year was Say You're Sorry by Karen Rose. I ended up DNFing this one after 250 pages, and this book is like over 600 pages. It's freaking massive. It's like a romantic thriller novel, and it follows a detective's point of view, which is probably why I ended up DNFing it, but there's like a romance happening between the detective and this serial killer's next victim girl. It's just, their romance was just not it for me. It was just very boring, and they didn't have any chemistry, and their romance was just very cheesy, and on top of that, with the detective point of view, it was just really not interesting to me. But the only thing that still does interest me about this book is the whole aspect of like the serial killer and like them tracking down the serial killer. Like I think that's an interesting part of the story, but like there was so much of this book that's about the romance and the detective's point of view, and it was just so bogged down, like I could not enjoy it. One book that I tried listening to the audiobook to get into it was The Need by Helen Phillips, and this is one that I really expected to like because it's described as a speculative thriller. It's about this mom who's like, there's an invader in the home, like there's a guy in the house, and she's like in the other room with the kids, and she can hear like there's somebody breaking into the house, and I thought it would be very interesting, but this book is like not even really about that at all. It keeps going back and forth between scenes from the guy breaking into the house, and then the next chapter will just be like a random event from the past with the mom and the kids that you don't give a shit about, and it seems completely irrelevant to the story, and it's just so slow and boring, and you're just constantly waiting for anything to happen. So I actually ended up DNFing this one too. I listened to the audiobook, so I'm not too sure how far I got into this, but I was just super bored by this. I have two other books that I tried to get into the audiobooks that I just could not get into. The first one is Something in the Water by Catherine Stedman, and this one was just, the writing style was just so not for me. Like, it was just not great, and I felt like these characters were all like being held at a distance. Like, they were just very like one-dimensional and very flat, and I just could not get into this. And this is a thriller, and I just really expected to be really into this one, but it was just not my thing. And then another one is Solace Island by Meg Tilly. Could not get into either. I was listening to the audiobook and I listened to maybe like 3 or 4 parts of it, and I was just like super uninvested, didn't really care about these characters, didn't care about the island or any of this stuff that was going on in this book. Another one of my absolute least favorite books of the year that I DNF'd, that I listened to the audiobook for, was Supermarket by Bobby Hall, what's his name? I don't know, but this book is written by the rapper Logic. This book was just, oh my god, it was such a joke. Like, it was so bad. Like, I don't even know how this got published bad. The writing was absolutely awful. Like, it was written like a little 3rd grader wrote this book and published it, and this was awful. But you'll hear about this one again in my worst of the year video. These next 2 books are both books that I got about like 50 to 80 pages into before I DNF'd it. The first one is Well Met by Jen DeLuca, and I can't tell if I didn't like this book just because I was super uninterested in the story, or if I just wasn't in the mood for this when I picked it up. So again, if you can convince me that this book is great, then this is another one that I'd be willing to give a second chance to. For some reason, when I read this, I was just really not in the mood, and I think I realized that I don't really care about Renaissance fairs, so maybe that's another part of the reason why I didn't end up enjoying this one, because they were just all taking it so seriously, and it was just kind of like cringe, you know? So I DNF'd this one. And then another one that I DNF'd very recently actually is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and this is one that I got 80 whole pages into. I actually took this one with me to New York, and I was reading it in the hotel, and I just could not get into this book. The main characters were driving me nuts. I don't know, I had a bunch of like little nitpicky issues with this one, but I don't know, I might give this one a second chance as well, but again, like, it just was driving me nuts. Like, these characters were driving me nuts. So DNF'd this one. One of my very recent DNFs from the end of November was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, and this is another one that I read over like 200 pages of it, and I also like half read this book and then half listened to the audiobook for this one, and I just DNF'd it because I couldn't do it anymore. And this is one that I was really expecting to love, so it kind of made me sad. But this one is like a historical fiction novel that takes place in 1940s New York in the theater scene, and I think I realized that I don't really like reading about the theater scene. I just don't really care about reading about theater. Like, I love reading about movies, but theater is just different. I feel like historical fiction is such like hit or miss for me usually, you know, like it's like rare for me to actually like love a historical fiction, and most of the time it ends up kind of boring me like this one did. But this main character was just driving me nuts throughout this book. Like, literally all she talks about is her sex life. I don't know, I just didn't care. I literally just didn't care, and it's just not for me. So it made me sad, but it is what it is, I guess. And the last book that I wanted to talk about that I have just very recently DNF'd is The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, and I got like 200 pages into this book, and I just realized that I just don't care. And it's sad because this one was so promising, and I really expected to love this one because it's being compared to The Martian. It's about this girl that's like underground, and it's a thriller, and it's kind of creepy and spooky, and like it is creepy and spooky, but like nothing has happened in 200 pages, and I'm just waiting around and nothing is happening. I feel like this is one of those books that if you can convince me that the ending is worth reading for, then I might continue this one, but for now it's just a DNF because I can't get through this book. Like, it was putting me in a major reading slump, and it was just not something I was enjoying, and it's just one of those thrillers that's like very, very slow moving, and it's over like 400 pages, so this one's a DNF for now. Sorry. Those are all of the books that I have DNF'd in the year of 2019, at least all of the ones that I can remember, because I'm sure there's probably even more than this, because I am not really afraid to DNF books. Like, I used to care a little bit about it, but now I'm like, I have so many books that I want to read that if a book is not holding my attention or is not making me happy, and it's frustrating me, then like why the heck would I continue reading it when I have so much other stuff to read? And reading is supposed to be fun, and it is not fun when you read books that you don't like and that is making reading feel like a chore for you, you know? So I have absolutely no issues with DNFing books that just aren't doing it for me. I guess let me know your thoughts on any of these books. Like again, if I said like this is one that I might be convinced to continue reading if the ending is great, then please let me know if you've really enjoyed any of these books and you think that I would enjoy it if I continue to read it. But honestly, most of these are probably going to be books that I end up like getting rid of or just not continuing reading them because I just don't care about the stories, which is why I stopped reading them. But I am open-minded to any that you think that I might like, so let me know your thoughts. How many books did you DNF in the year of 2019, or do you keep track of all the books that you DNF in the year? What was the furthest book that you got into before you decided to DNF? Or do you just not believe in DNFing and you just finish every book that you read? Because that is a superpower that I do not have. That is all for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys soon with a new video. Bye!